WOW Air has a short but exciting history, from their first flight in 2011 to their collapse in 2019. In this first video of a 3-part series on aviation in Iceland, I will look into the rise and fall of WOW Air. Don't forget to subscribe so that you won't miss a new video. So where did it all begin, and what were the factors that eventually led to their fall? Let's talk aviation. The beginning of WOW Air all starts with an event that disrupted aviation for over a week and caused over 100,000 flights to be cancelled. The eruption of the Eyjafjallajökull volcano. This will be the last time I'll try to pronounce this, I promise. On March 20, 2010. The eyes of the world turned toward Iceland, and they saw this as an opportunity. While the sentiment was turning negative rather quickly, they launched the Inspired by Iceland campaign. The goal was to attract both tourists and businesses to Iceland. Together with the effects of the financial crisis, which weakened the local currency, the Icelandic krona, this strategy proved successful and the tourism industry flourished. Icelandic entrepreneur Colin Mogensen saw a gap in the market. With the influx of tourists came the need for cheap air travel to and from Iceland. While ICELANDAIR, more on them in a later video, had been the de facto monopolist on the island, there was room for a low-cost airline. Founded in November 2011, they started operations at the end of May the next year. Their first flight was from Reykjavik Airport to Paris-Charles. Not much later, they started operations to the major European cities, Berlin and London, among others. To further expand their network, they acquired Iceland Express, a small Icelandic airline that operated 2 Airbus A320s at the time and flew from Iceland to both Europe and the US. During the years that followed, they kept expanding, and in 2015 they entered the US, shortly followed by Canada. While they only operated the A320 family up to this point, in December of 2016 they leased 2 Airbus A330s to start operations to the US West Coast and plan to expand it to Asia as well. Right around this time is when they reached their peak business-wise. With a revenue of $290 million in 2016 and around $500 million in 2017, they were profitable and the future looked bright. However, it couldn't be. In 2017, they reported their first losses in 3 years, and the airline was declining in general. Due to their operations as an ultra-low-cost carrier, customers had to pay for everything except a glass of water, margins were low. Combined with their tight schedules, which meant frequent delays, customer satisfaction was decreasing rapidly. The issues didn't remain unnoticed, and the Icelandic flag carrier, ICELANDAIR, announced that it would try to buy WOW Air. The entrance of WOW had taken its toll on ICELANDAIR, as passengers now had no choice, and many were opting for the low fares of WOW Air, despite the lack of service. By acquiring WOW, ICELANDAIR would become the only large player in the Icelandic aviation market again, as both airlines served together over 3/4 of the market. However, within a month after the announcement, ICELANDAIR pulled out of the deal, stating that WOW failed to meet certain conditions. And after this, WOW had to return 4 aircraft to its lessors, as the airline has essentially no money left and was in desperate need for some cash. The A330 Neos, which were already paid in delivery, wouldn't be delivered. In the same week, Indigo Partners, the corporation behind the European low-cost carrier Wizz Air and the American low-cost carrier Frontier Airlines, stated that they would become a minority shareholder in WOW. However, some months later, they too would back out of the deal. And in 2019, the only way was down for WOW Air. They had to drastically decrease their staff, reduce their fleet further, and cancel more and more routes, including one to Delhi, which they opened just 4 weeks prior, the start of a vicious cycle. In a final attempt to save the airline, they again asked ICELANDAIR to take them over, but unfortunately for WOW, they didn't, and on March 28, 2019, they abruptly ceased all operations. So what led to their fall? I think it was a combination of bad luck and some questionable decisions. First, while the airline profited from the increasing tourism industry in Iceland, this is highly seasonal. Due to the location of Iceland, in wintertime, the daily hours of daylight can sink as low as 4. This means that they will have to earn enough during the summer season to go into somewhat of a hibernation during the winter. It can therefore be no surprise that the airline failed in the spring, after a winter with relatively small income. To earn some extra money, they not only focused on tourists, but also looked into the transatlantic market, offering flights between Europe and the US with a short stop in Iceland. While the Iceland route grew in popularity, during the last years of WOW, Norwegian aggressively entered the transatlantic market, offering low-cost flights between Europe and the US. It was hard for WOW to compete, as they operated a more ultra-low-cost model, which meant that compared to the Norwegian, they had fewer amenities and they had the extra stop in the middle. Their CEO blames their fall on the decision to add the A330 to their fleet and to start flights to Asia. I can no other than to agree with him. As with Norwegian, which eventually also had to move away from long-haul low cost, there are very few airlines that make it work. For more insights into the reason why long-haul low cost is hard, take a look at the video on Norwegian's rise and fall. Next to the more common reasons why it's a bad idea to offer long-haul low cost, I'll weigh another mistake. With low-cost flights in general, airlines can only make a profit by the laws of economy of scale. WOW was at the time a relatively small airline and at its peak had only 23 aircraft, of which only a few were A330s. This meant that their logistic operations were made unnecessarily complex, due to the fact that pilots and flight attendants can fly on both aircraft. WOW Air wasn't one small airline, but operations-wise they were two even smaller airlines. If these weren't enough reasons to go bankrupt, WOW Air was also heavily affected by rising fuel prices, which increased operation costs and lowered margins. Because of their rapid expansion, they almost had no money on hand, and the rise in oil prices, together with the aircraft payments for the new A330s, tripped them over the edge. I think that their fall was inevitable once they ordered the A330 and started focusing on long-haul operations. However, even before that, their business plan had some flaws. Flying ultra-low cost means that in order to turn profits, you have to fly many flights with lower margins. While they were profitable in 2015 and 2016, this partly had to do with the low oil prices, and as these increased, the airline started to struggle. Competition from ICELANDAIR was fierce, and in contrast to ICELANDAIR, WOW didn't have a business class cabin with highly profitable passengers to make up for their low fees in economy. What are your thoughts on WOW Air? Do you agree with me that the business model they operated was just not viable, and that the A330 was the final nail in their coffin? Let me know in the comments below. This was the first video of a 3-part series on aviation in Iceland. In the next video, I'll look into Flyplay, the spiritual successor of WOW. Thank you for watching, and please consider subscribing to Let's Talk Aviation.